President Trump and his team continue to test the boundaries of the U.S. Constitution, from detaining students on visas due to their speech to repeatedly floating the idea of a third term. It is so often the courts that are in the last line of defense for those who oppose the administration's actions. But are big law firms prepared to take them on? Amongst his many executive orders, Trump has targeted major practices and their lawyers who he perceives have been opposed to him in the past. He has aimed to take away security clearances and access to federal government buildings for massive firms due to their having worked with his political rivals. And so far, it appears to be working. Some of these firms are now caving, most prominently Paul Weiss, which entered protracted negotiations with the administration to get the order targeting it rescinded. The consequences could be dire, with many firms reluctant to challenge the administration in even changing the focus of their pro bono work. Alberto Gonzales is a former White House counsel to George W. Bush and the former United States Attorney General, who warned in September that he viewed Trump as perhaps the most serious threat to the rule of law in a generation. Alberto Gonzales, thank you so much for joining the program. And is it these types of executive orders that led you to that belief that he is indeed a threat to the rule of law in the United States?
Well, I mean, what we're seeing today is even more than I had imagined. I think that I wish we had a president, like with every president, who looks forward in terms of what the needs of the country are and providing leadership going forward. These actions going after law firms that he believes were against him previously is just him looking backwards. And I don't think that's good for the country. I don't think the attacks on law firms is good for the rule of law. Lawyers have a special obligation, a special role in protecting and promoting the rule of law. And when that is challenged, then it challenges one of the fundamental pillars of our democracy. If we don't have the rule of law, we don't have a democracy, we don't have America. And so I think people need to be paying attention to what's going on here. And I applaud the firms that are standing up and bringing suit. I'm not going to, it's hard for me to criticize Paul Weiss and Skadden, those firms that have tried to reach in a settlement, because I don't know all the terms. I don't know what the financial pressures were on the firms. But from my perspective, I think it's important to stand up for the rule of law.
Well, those firms that you mentioned that are fighting back the executive orders, Perkins Coie, Jenner & Block, and Wilmer Hale, have had some success in the courts thus far. Do you think ultimately, though, that they will prevail? And maybe even if they do, there's still something unsettling about perception and whether or not these law firms, even if they prevail in court, will think twice about taking up some of these cases that the president deems make him look bad.
I think that there will be second guessing about taking up some of these cases. And I think that what that means is that you and I, American companies, are not going to have our choice of representation. And I think that's wrong. I think that all of us should have the right to choose who we want to represent us in court. I think this is more than just looking back, as I spoke about earlier. I think it's also perhaps looking forward. I think the president may, and again, I've never spoken to the president but one time. I don't know him and I don't know his motivations, but he may be looking at who is going to challenge what he wants to do going forward. One of the main advantages or the things that makes the rule of law so important is it serves as a check on abuses of power. And I think it's very, very important that lawyers, that our court systems, our criminal justice system, all of our citizens pay attention to what's going on and to make sure that there are no abuses of power coming out of this White House.
This does have at least the perception of extortion, especially when some of these firms, the two that you mentioned, Paul Weiss and Skadden, have settled with the administration, and these executive orders have been rescinded against them in exchange for them taking on either $40 million or $100 million of pro bono work in areas that the president supports. Is this even legal?
Well, that remains to be seen. We've got challenges going on in the court now, in the courts now, and we'll see whether or not it's legal. To me, it appears offensive, and it doesn't look right, quite frankly. As I said, I'm disappointed at the settlements. As I said, also, I don't know all the terms. I don't know the financial pressures that were involved here. I don't know the decision making at these firms. But it doesn't send a very good message. I applaud the ABA for standing up, and others in the legal community standing up and talking about how this is problematic and we do need to pay attention to it. And at the end of the day, this is probably something that's going to be resolved in the courts. Obviously, there are a lot of issues in the courts today. And I think it's very important that we have the best legal talent available to, again, all of our citizens, all companies, to ensure that the rule of law is being respected and followed.